Welcome. In this session, we will talk about the recent unrest in Sudan, the India's effort under Operation Kaveri, similar such operations that have been done by India, and the major refugee camps. Now, this class would be an overview with a point of view from history, geography, polity, encompassing all the aspects necessary to understand about Sudan. So to begin with, let's understand the political structure within the spatial dimensions in geography of Sudan. So as you can see, Sudan is one of the countries from Africa. As you can see in the map, there are two nations, Sudan and South Sudan. South Sudan separated recently in 2011 and this became an independent country after a stretch of 20 years of continuous guerrilla warfare that occurred, and in this process a huge number of internal displacement took place. There was severe war, famine, which led to the further escalation of the conflict between the two countries. Ultimately, South Sudan became an independent country. If we look onto the map of Sudan, it has the Red Sea nearby and the Nile River flows through it. Khartoum, which is the capital, is the point of confluence for the White Nile and Blue Nile, which merge at the region or the city of Khartoum. In the neighboring countries, Chad, Libya, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, Congo and Central African Republic are some of the countries that have boundaries to Sudan. Now, if we talk about the unrest, we would focus how the 2019 to 2022 unrest had been ongoing in Sudan, and as a result of which Operation Kaveri was launched by India recently on 24th of April to bring back the Indians from Sudan. Now, this region hosts nearly 1.1 million refugees, which is a huge figure. Now, out of the total refugees, 70% of the refugees are from South Sudan region and 11% refugees are from the region of Eritrea, Asmara. So, those are the areas where you have highest number of refugees. Along with that, there are nearly 3 million internally displaced people in Sudan. Also important to note, the unrest in Sudan was so far in the rural areas, but recently it is spread to the urban fringes, with the youth and women playing an important role in the recent unrest. Now, the asylum seekers are mainly in the region of the western part of Sudan, which region is called as Darfur. Now, this Darfur area, as you can see in the next map here, is the area where most number of refugee settlements are there. Now, the recent outbreak which took place in Ethiopia as well was responsible for lots of refugees to move into the region of Darfur. So these are the areas where we have seen a huge number of movement. In the eastern part, there are two important regions which are the camps. Those are the refugee camps in the name of Rakuba. Now, this is important. Why? Last year itself, you had important questions related to refugee camps across the globe. So, two of them hosted in East Sudan are important. Those are Rakuba, and then you have Tunaydbah. Tunaydbah and Rakuba are the two important refugee camps. As I mentioned, the boundaries for Darfur have been mentioned here, with a major region of Nyala. And there are various regions which have been identified under the UNHCR, where we have the North Darfur, the Darfur further classified as West Central South Darfur. So we have a refugee camp on the boundary of West and Central Darfur. Then we have huge number of refugee camps in the eastern area. As I said, some of the refugee camps are really important. Near the Abuda area is one of the refugee camps which is important, and two of the refugee camps that we mentioned, Rakuba and Tunaydbah are the two important refugee camps in the region of Sudan. Coming on to the next important thing that we need to discuss is the internal conflict. Why and how did it actually took place? So this internal conflict had been a long process of political unrest, and this political unrest was led by military versus pro-democracy. So the conflict basically arises between military versus pro-democracy. 30 years has been the time frame for which al-Bashir has remained in power in Sudan. However, during the time of al-Bashir, the subsidies on food has been cut and there have been emergency provisions which were imposed. Now this was severely opposed by the local people and there has been always a tussle for the same, leading to huge number of mass protests, killing and internal displacement within Sudan. There have been reduction in the subsidies for food, for basic necessities, overall deteriorating the standard of living of the people in the region of Sudan, especially the regions of Khartoum, the capital area. Now, this has broadened, the protests have broadened, have spread over the years, asking for removal of al-Bashir from power, and not only that, this has also led through a series of agreements. So in 2019, the 4th August Declaration, as it has been called as, brought in the following points. The points included that the power sharing would remain for 39 months, the election would be held after that, a sovereign council, cabinet and legislative body would be formed, the general will head the council for the first 21 months and the civilians for the later 18 months. So total period of 39 months, and towards the end of that we have seen that the turmoil again begins in Sudan. Now the council was believed to have 11 members, 5 from civilian, 5 from military and 1 based on a mutual consensus. The prime minister would be nominated by the pro-democratic movement party and then the ministers of defense and interior would be chosen by the military. So there would be a proper representation from military as well as pro-democratic forces, and the other positions would be taken by the pro-democratic forces finally to give this whole a one single picture. So on 4th August 2019, a constitutional declaration was given for a transitional government and this signing took place on 17th of August. Now, till the present period, this has been in existence. So there have been huge number of killings, there have been toxic effects of cyanide and mercury from the gold mines in the north as well as the south part of Khofradan. Similarly, there have been trials and there have been coup d'etat which have been commonly witnessed there. However, the goal was to have a new Chief Justice or an Attorney General and to understand or identify the reasons of mass investigate the mass massacre that has happened and to investigate that whole issue. So what was the process? In 2019, Hassan was released from Cairo. In 2019, Khair became the Chief Justice and Hibir becomes the Attorney General. However, in 2019 later, Abid was responsible for the investigation for the massacre that had happened. In 2021, all political prisoners got released and Hamdok was reinstated as the Prime Minister. Later on, Hamdok resigned in 2022 January. The protests were suppressed and so far there has been a consistent unrest within the region. Now this unrest has over the time further deteriorated with a harsh struggle between the military and the pro-democratic forces, resulting into evacuation of people from the region. Now, India's effort in this evacuation process is known as Operation Kaveri, which was launched on 24th April. 2 aircrafts of IAF Jeddah and INS Sumedha at Port Sudan have been released for the same. Now, it is not just the first effort that has been taken place by India. There have been numerous such instances where India has played a leading role. Operation Ganga recently, when there was the Ukraine-Russia crisis, took place. We have Operation Devi Shakti. This took place to help the people struck in the region of Afghanistan when Taliban attacked Afghanistan. Similarly, during the COVID time, two operations were there. One was Vande Bharat and the other was the Samudra Setu. So Vande Bharat through the normal route, Samudra Setu through the sea routes. So two important missions during the COVID time. There was Operation Rahat, and this was to help people struck in Yemen in 2015. Similarly, Operation Maitri in 2015 to help people who were stuck in Nepal by the earthquake. Operation Dost recently in Turkey was another important effort by India. So during the Turkey earthquake. So those are some of the important missions. The idea of this class was to give you a quick overview about the unrest in Sudan, the geopolitical historical instances and India's effort. All of these are extremely important for your upcoming prelims. So study well and prepare more topics similar to those. A series of expected questions, a lot of them is already released and a lot is yet to come. So stay tuned. Have a wonderful evening.